So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm viewing the new Nicolas Cage film, Dream Scenario. But just before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers. But if you prefer to listen to your podcasts on Spotify, well, you are in luck, as you can also listen to this podcast on Spotify at Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to me on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast, of course, and leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Dream Scenario. So, as what he said, this is a new Nicolas Cage film out right now. It's directed by Christopher Borgli. I might be mispronouncing his name, and apologies if I am. And the film's produced by Ari Aster, who previously made films like Hereditary, Midsommar, which I actually really liked Midsommar, and that had a sort of dreamlike quality to it. So I found it quite interesting that a film about dreams was produced by Ari Aster, who I haven't seen, but was afraid, which he directed earlier this year. But as of the films I have seen by him, they all feel very dreamlike. And yeah, the film is about dreams, and that was the biggest and frankly only reason I watched the film, because the premise of the film is fascinating. Nicolas Cage plays this normal, everyday person that keeps appearing in random people's dreams for no reason whatsoever, and nobody really knows what's going on. That is the premise for the film. I mean, more happens as the film progresses, but that's the premise. And I found that premise to be fascinating when I heard about it. I found it fascinating. And then, when I saw the trailer for this film, when I went to go and watch The Killer at the cinema a couple of weeks back now, and by the way, go and check out my review of that film if you haven't already, my review of the new David Fincher film, The Killer. Yeah, go and check out my review if you haven't already. But when I went to go and watch that film at the cinema, I saw the trailer for this film, and it looked right up my alley. I loved the trailer, the feel, the energy of the trailer, and it looked like it was going to be so funny to watch. And after seeing the film earlier today, here are my thoughts on it. I think this film is fine. I struggle to really get into it, if I'm being honest, and I think it could be a lot better. In fact, I think it should be a lot better. It has this fascinating premise, as I've already mentioned, but the problem is the delivery, the execution. It feels like the writers and the filmmakers, and I don't know who wrote the film, but it feels like they came up with the idea, what if you had this random everyday person appearing in all these people's dreams? What if you got Nicolas Cage to play him? Perfect casting, because Nicolas Cage is a national treasure. No pun intended. You know, I think the cast of Nicolas Cage is great, and it feels like they came up with that idea, and then they were like, great, let's go into production with it. But where do we take the idea? I don't know. We could do this, we could do that. What if this happens to that character? What if this happens to that character? What if Nicolas Cage's character starts doing all these creepy things? Not to give too much away, but what if he starts doing all these bad things in people's dreams later on in the film? Oh yeah, that could be an interesting idea. But the thing is, the ideas are there to a certain point, but the delivery isn't. I was watching it going, you're almost on the verge of doing something great there. You were so almost on the verge. That's what I was thinking when I was watching the film, because there were so many moments where I was like, yes, you're doing something really interesting here. Something that's really getting me back into the film, because I kept feeling unengaged, and I feel engaged by a certain point, but then I just feel unengaged all over again, because there's so many moments where it's like, you're right there, but you're just not getting it. It just feels like the filmmakers didn't really know how to execute this idea. They came with the idea, which is a great idea, and they didn't really know what to do with it. And there is a lot to admire in this film. I will say that. There's a lot to admire. Nicolas Cage is brilliant. I mean, he's one of those actors which is going to be remembered for years and decades and however long to come. You know, he is one of those actors that there's no one like him. And this film really cements that. He gives off such an emotional range, and the way he plays this normal everyday character, you never really know how he's going to be in certain scenes. You think you've got your head around that character, then something happens like, oh no wait, I haven't got my head around that character. He is so great in this film. Just absolutely, he's insanely good. He's mesmerising to watch, and I really loved, as what he mentioned, the casting of Nicolas Cage as that character, as what he punned. You know, he's a national treasure. Nicolas Cage is a national treasure, and I love how now he is doing more self-referential roles. Like, what was it, a couple of years back with Pedro Pascal, he did The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and I just watched that film a couple of months ago, and I must admit, I didn't really like it, but I liked that he did that. I liked that he's now starting more self-referential roles, because in the Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, he plays himself, and he doesn't do that here. But at the same time, the fact that he's playing this role as somebody, and the fact that we have Nicolas Cage playing the role of somebody going into people's dreams randomly, I think is just genius. You know, I think that's a piece of inspired casting, and he's great in this film. I mean, it's not a self-referential role as his was in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, but it's still kind of self-referential when you think about it. And I think that the relationship between Cage's character and his wife, played sweetly and gently, as I put down here, by Julianne Nicholson, works really well. Right, so this is going to add on one thing I forgot to mention whilst I was doing the podcast, but I just remembered to mention as soon as I finished recording the podcast, is this. I love how the film feels real. It does actually feel like you're watching these real life people in these real locations doing these real things. The film is grounded in verisimilitude. If you don't know what word is, look it up. But yeah, the film feels like it is real, and even though you have Nicolas Cage in there, and even so you're meant to know you're watching Nicolas Cage, because it's Nicolas Cage appearing in people's dreams. I think that's part of the novelty and part of the enjoyment you have watching the film. Even though you're meant to know it's Nicolas Cage, his character still feels real. I did like that. I did like how he is appearing in people's dreams, but it never felt fake. All the dreams felt like they were real. Although saying that, now when I say that out loud, I literally just thought, I didn't totally love how the dreams felt real though, because dreams aren't real. And a lot of the dreams in this film, yeah, there's weird things happening in them, but they didn't feel weird enough, at least for my liking. So I like how the film feels real, but also I don't. Anyway, back to the podcast. It's a beautifully made film, and you can see what the filmmakers are going for. I was about to say it was a well-directed film. Personally, I didn't like the filmmaking decisions, but I can see what the filmmakers were going for. I can see what the director was going for. I can see what they were going for. I just didn't totally agree with it, but it's a well-made film for what it is, and it's beautifully shot. It's really well shot. There's so many scenes in the film where I was looking at it going, wow, it's one of those films where, you know, every frame of painting, everything like that. And Michael Cera, who many people might know from Arrested Development, he's also in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's been in loads of stuff, you know. He voiced Robin in the Lego Batman movie. He has a role in this film, and I think he's really well cast in a role which is not too dissimilar from the roles he's played in the past. You know, when you're not really sure if you can trust him or not. And I think the addition of Michael Cera in this film worked very well. That all being said, the film, as I've said before, just has so many great ideas and great moments, but it doesn't really tie together. It doesn't really do anything with those great ideas. Like, there's one section of the film, and I'm not going to go into spoilers here, but there's one section of the film where we meet this character who's been having these sexual fantasies in her dreams surrounding Nicolas Cage's character. And I liked where that was going. But then the whole section, what they did with that whole section of the film, just felt like they were playing it for jokes. And I must admit, I didn't really find the film funny at all. I was about to say I found it a bit funny. No, I didn't really. I found the film mostly unfunny, and that whole section, I mean, I was sat there going, am I meant to find this funny? And I was watching this in a cinema that wasn't full by any means, but I had about 10 people in it. I didn't hear anyone else laughing. And, you know, it's only my cinema, so that doesn't really mean anything. But at the same time, the scene felt more awkward and uncomfortable than funny. And there were so many scenes like that in the film where I feel like they touch on these great ideas, but they're playing it for comedic effect. And then when they play it for comedic effect, it's just more awkward and uncomfortable. At least that's what it was like for me. And I struggled. I found the film more unengaging as it went on. I really struggled to get into it. I really struggled to get invested in Nicolas Cage's character, because even so, I think Nicolas Cage is a one-of-a-kind actor. His character wasn't too likeable, and I get that might be on purpose, but I just struggled to get invested in that character. I struggled to care about what was going on. I just it was just disappointing in the end. It was just really disappointing in my opinion, because the premise is great, and it's original, and it's creative, and it's imaginatively fascinating. I didn't even say that word correctly. It's imaginatively fascinating. I got there in the end. You know, I love the premise of the film, and there were so many aspects of the film which were just almost there, but for me, it didn't really work. I wouldn't discourage anyone from seeing this, not at all, because it's one of those films which I think is either going to work for you or not. I mean, that's the same with any film, but I think this film in particular, you're either going to go with it or you're not going to go with it. And I went with the idea, hence why I went to go to the cinema to watch this film, but I didn't go with the way that the filmmakers decided to execute it. You know what I mean? I couldn't get into it. I'm just being honest. But at the same time, like I've already said, I wouldn't discourage anyone from watching it. And if you like the film, that's great. I wish I did. I wish I thought it was much better than I actually ended up thinking it was. It's not a bad film, really, by any means. I didn't think it was terrible. But, I mean, I still don't really know what it was about. Because at one point, it's about all these dream scenarios, hence the name of the film. Then at one point, it's a love story. And I'm like, just decide what story you want to tell, alright? Just do that. Again, not a terrible film, but not as good as it could be. And so for me, it had a fascinating premise, which made it a somewhat intriguing watch to a degree because of that premise, but it just had that lacklustre delivery, which made it an overall underwhelming experience to watch in the cinema. And so, for that reason, I'm going to give Dream Scenario, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. You know, I think the film was fine. I don't think it's terrible, hence why I haven't given it lower than a 5 out of 10. But I'm giving it a 5 out of 10 because I give films that I just at least enjoyed a 6 out of 10. The thing is, when I was watching this in the cinema, I was entertained by parts of it. But I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, because I think I was just entertained by the novelty of it all. The novelty of this idea, which again is a great idea. It's a really great idea. But at the same time, when I look back in it, I don't think I could ever rewatch this film. I don't think I could rewatch this film. And I don't think it's also going to be one of those films which people reflect on in years to come. I really just don't think it's that good. if I'm being completely honest. But again, if you like the film, that's fantastic. I wish I found it funny. And the thing is, comedy is one of the most subjective things ever, so the fact that I didn't find it funny doesn't mean a thing. You might come out of this film or watch it on streaming and think it's one of the funniest films of the year. Personally, I didn't. I think Nicolas Cage is great. I think Julianne Nicholson is great as his wife. And I think all the other support performances work. But I just didn't really care about any of the characters. Didn't really care about the story too much. And struggled to get engaged in it. Not a terrible film, but with such a imaginatively fascinating premise, you would think the execution would be better. But for me, it was just lackluster. Because of certain filmmaking decisions, and it felt like they had an idea and they just didn't know what to do with it. And so, all in all, as I've already said, I'm going to say that dream scenario, I'm going to say that it's a 5 out of 10 for me. Anyway, guys, that is it for today's podcast. If you did enjoy this podcast, or if you did enjoy Dream Scenario, should I say, please let me know why in the comment section below. Maybe you loved it, and if you did, that is great. And please let me know why I am wrong in the comment section below, because if I am wrong, then that means you're right. And I love it when people like or love a film far more than I do. So whatever your thoughts are on a dream scenario, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like and subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you all for watching or listening to this podcast, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye!